Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for joining myself and Steve Kim. We're both in different studios today. I'm in my home studio. Steve, whose home are you in? Where are you at?
Well, I'm at the satellite studios of the Los Angeles Fearless office. This is actually Mario Lopez's private office. He actually does his radio show here. We do the 3 knockdown rule, which we just finished. And so I've done a few shows from here, and it's always a lot of fun, a lot of echoing, but we're going to do the thing here. Doesn't matter. We persevere.
Now, Steve, am I too toxic for Mario to be seen in public with me? Am I fat Andrew Tate for Mario Lopez?
Oh, wow, you had to go there. One day I think he might have the time. He has a very busy schedule. He wanted to say hello, but right now he's doing a reading for one of his movies. They're actually doing a reading right outside the conference room. Yeah, so maybe he'll say hello later.
Andrew, Mario's got such a great family. I love following them on Instagram. Him and his wife do these dance routines. They get their kids involved. Yeah, it's a beautiful family. Mario is living the life. What's in the background there? Who is that? You and Mario? What is the boxing deal in the background?
All right, so this is a fight that Mario and I, we will never see eye to slanted eye on. It's the famous fight between Julio Cesar Chavez and Meldrick Taylor, March 17th, 1990. It's a fight that Meldrick Taylor jumped out to a quick lead, throwing great flashy combinations. But then Chavez, with the Mexican body shots, he's heavy-handed. And I'm sure you remember it, Jason. It's the fight where Meldrick Taylor was drowning, but it looked like he was going to make it to shore. And then he gets knocked down with about, 13 seconds to go. He rises from his feet, little unsteady. And then Richard Steele, S-T-E-A-L, makes a horrible, horrible stoppage with 2 seconds to go. You want to see me and Mario go at it on the show, or just in general scream at each other? Bring up this fight, because he's like super fan, super Mexican there. And I love the 84 Olympic team. And Meldrick Taylor was one of the shining lights alongside Pernell Whitaker and Evander Holyfield, Virgil Hill, and the like. I will never get over that result of that fight, Jason, to the day I die. Terrible stoppage.
So, Mario defends the stoppage. You guys are on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Can I just say, I've often joked, but it's not really a joke. Growing up as a Mexican in the United States, I believe in the 80s, you probably had one of two things in your home: a picture of the Virgin Mary or a portrait of Julio Cesar Chavez. So, yeah, he will never admit that his idol got an absolute... I can't even get him to admit that Pernell Whitaker really did beat Chavez decisively in 1993. He hates when I bring that up. Sore subject with him.
All right, so you guys got boxing going on in the background. I don't know if in my new studio, I got a musical background. There's album covers everywhere along this brick wall. I think you can see Teddy Pendergrass and Adele.
Okay, I couldn't name you a single song of Adele, whoever she is. Now, Teddy Pendergrass.
Hello? Did you really just say you can't name an Adele song? Hello?
Could not name you a lyric. Okay? Now, but old Teddy P, his famous song that I know of, for me, given my boxing background, there used to be this world champion, very good fighter. His name was Stevie Johnston out of Denver, Colorado. And his walkout song was Love TKO. And I actually covered a fight in Denver. I think it was at the Pepsi Center when he fought there. About 18,000 people. When he played that song, the eruption of noise would have done old Teddy P proud.
I don't know if you know this interesting piece of background on Teddy Pendergrass, but he actually originated in a group called Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. This is before he went out on his own. And so Teddy it was called Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. Harold Melvin was just a backup singer. Teddy was the lead singer. And so everybody thought Teddy Pendergrass was Harold Melvin because he sung all the leads. And they ended up getting in a dispute because Harold was collecting more of the money when Teddy was the star, and then that's why Teddy went out on his own. But he did some great music with Harold Melville and the Blue Notes long before he became Teddy Pendergrass. Teddy was kind of the original adult version of R. Kelly. You know, the ladies love Teddy Pendergrass. But anyway, great singer. I'm distracted and I'm slowing the show down. Let's get to what's going on in the news cycle. I want to play you this clip from Whoopi Goldberg on The View. They had Dylan Mulvaney, the man that pretends to be a woman. They had him on for some reason, and it led to a discussion about transgender athletes, and basically Whoopi argued that there's no difference between a biological man who thinks he's a woman and these women that they're competing against. So let's play that clip, and then you and I will respond.
When you come in and you say, oh, you know, these are men, you know, competing against women, you're assuming that the women are weak and just can't do anything except be here. Have you seen female athletes? They know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what's going on or why this is an issue.
All right, so Steve, there's Whoopi making a fool of herself, saying something incredibly stupid. And to me, that's what The View is. It's a bunch of delusional women just making delusional arguments and social media reacting to them, saying dumb things. Whoopi Goldberg knows nothing about sports. I find it hard to believe that she actually thinks that these men have no physical advantage or any different than the women they're competing against. The View is a psyop, I guess, is my number one reaction to any and all of that.
Jason, I've said this for a while. I vehemently disagree with anybody that says The View should be banned or canceled. I truly believe they're the greatest recruiting magnet and tool that the conservative Republican movement has. I actually think they're part of the reason why November 5th swung the way it did. They are so left in their opinions that they actually turn off a good segment of America, and they actually give a window into the soul that they don't even allow the Trojan horse to be parked and to sneak in. They are incredibly obtuse in all their arguments and downright dishonest. I actually want them around, and I've used this analogy before. In college football, the last thing you want is for your rival to get rid of the bad coach. You actually want to have that bad coach win just enough games where they keep getting him an extension, because the bottom line is the last thing you want them is to hire the next Nick Saban. I find them to be excruciatingly frustrating, but at the same time, very useful.
I get what you're saying, but they do play a role in like preventing us from talking about anything serious. We're always reacting to the dumb stuff that they say, and that gives them control of the conversation. Well, I mean, there is some truth, and perhaps at some point, if we ever reverse the 19th Amendment, The View might be the reason why. That we finally just say, hey, look, we got to quit letting women vote. Have you watched The View? And that would be the ultimate payoff if we ever got there.
But Jason, I hear you, but don't you think that they are a daily reminder, at least 5 days a week, that the conservative movement or whatever culture clash that we are going through in this country, we can't let up? That their daily rhetoric and what they spew for whatever time, I guess it's an hour show, it's not like I'm an avid viewer, and the people that use their clips, the various content creators, it lets us know on our side, we have to be vigilant in messaging right across from them that we can't let up. And so they to me are a daily reminder, do not get complacent.
Yeah, they're the motivation to stay in the gym, I guess. And you perhaps you are giving me a whole different side of this and way to look at it. Like, I watch this clip, I get a tiny bit triggered, it motivates me. Like, I got to keep putting the truth out because there are nut jobs trying to seize power. I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna have to think more about this. You may have convinced me to take some enjoyment from The View.
When Sunny Hostin was basically giving a legal letter, when reading it almost like for about 3 weeks, it seemed like every other show she was giving these notices like, hey, by the way, I lied and I have to read this mea culpa. I'm really happy about it. But it gave evidence on live television that the mainstream media is the enemy, that they are downright lying, that they're thieves in a lot of ways in terms of the thoughts that they put out there. I found them to be, I'm just telling you, one of the great tools of the conservative movement leading into November 5. Now, look, you still have midterms coming up in a couple of years. The Donald Trump presidency, you could say what you want about it, how it's gotten off to. I know there's varying views. I love the fact that every day that he is the focus of what he does, because it gives a reminder to a lot of Americans on the opposite end of the spectrum, these are the people we are working actively against and we cannot let up.
Steve, I want to move on to a college basketball topic that I find fascinating because there's starting to be some momentum for Cooper Flagg, the freshman Duke basketball star, the great white hope of basketball. I saw a betting site, maybe it was Bovada or something, that is actually saying it's more likely he'll return to Duke for a second year rather than come out after his freshman year. I hope that it's true, and because I think the NBA needs that. They need someone that has built a college brand, has become a true star. But I people thought I was crazy when I was suggesting this a month or two ago. But it looks like there is a chance Cooper Flagg will return to Duke, and I think that would be a great thing for the sport of basketball.
It would be, and it certainly would be good for Duke. But as you've noticed, this has been a tradition. For a long time, Duke always seemed to be laden with fourth and fifth year players, going all the way from about 85, 86, starting with the Johnny Dawkins, Danny Ferry, Jay Billis crew, all the way up to about the late 90s, or certainly up until Christian Laettner and Bobby Hurley, and then the game changed and they changed with it. And I did notice Cooper's mom had a really pleasant experience at North Carolina this past weekend. And it seemed to me like there's two parents involved, right? Jason,
Yeah.
That probably, in addition to the NIL, we have to be honest, the money matters. But in addition to that, those two factors look like it may actually feel like we're going to get a second year. So I have a question, though, Jason. Given the dynamics of the game today, is staying 2 years now the equivalent of staying 4 years back in 1984?
Probably. But in order for Cooper Flagg to max out, he needs to stay 3 years, in my opinion. And look, there was a great tradition of the best players. Tim Duncan, they stayed 4 years in college, and that helped them max out at the professional level. And see, I don't think Cooper Flagg is this great super athletic, just going to wow the NBA with his athleticism. Now, he plays a different game than Tim Duncan, but I think the more he develops in college, the greater he's going to be as a pro player. And I do think he's going to be a pretty effective, good pro, particularly the way the game is played. He's not going to be Christian Laettner, who's going to peak at the college level. I think his peak will be at the NBA level, but I think he's best served by developing in college. And when he hits the NBA at 20 years old, hopefully 21 years old, he's ready to go. He's ready to. And matter of fact, I think he's kind of young. I think maybe he started at Duke at 17. But that's another reason. What did you think, Steve? Did you see his mom was doing this thing? He had a nice little dunk, and she started patting her head, like on his head. And some people were giving her grief, and he didn't even really dunk on anybody, and his parents are out of line for that. I thought it was fun.
Well, her mom has become a chapter of that Tobacco Road rivalry. You talk about players that need to stay an extra year or two. Generally, when I think of guys who leave early, I think of dynamic athletes. I really do. Guys that have that burst, that twitch. I don't see that really with Cooper. You know, when you go back to Zion Williamson, the last guy that I cared about in college basketball, just looking at the way his life has turned out, that's a guy that could have used another year at Duke. I think life came at him really fast. He wasn't ready for it. You look at some of the decisions he's made off the court, and you're saying, geez, you could have done things a little. Because I thought he was potentially one of the foundations of the new generation. And look, he still has time, but for the most part, 3-4 years in, he hasn't been Ben Simmons. I don't think it's been that type of bust, but he has been a disappointment. There's no doubt about it. And I think given what you say about the lack of athleticism that Flagg has, I am not so sure that he's a guy like a Kevin Durant or Carmelo Anthony, Jason. When I saw those guys play for that 1 year at Syracuse and Texas, I said to myself, those guys for 15 years will probably score 25 points a game. You could just absolutely see their games translating. I don't think it's that much of a guarantee with him.
Steve, let me take care of a little business, and when we come back, we'll play this Ryan Clark clip. Ryan Clark said something interesting about LeBron James, and, where he's kind of openly critical of LeBron James and how he's handled this Stephen A. Smith situation, how LeBron has put his son in an interesting position by forcing him into the NBA. And Ryan Clark actually makes the argument that LeBron should let Bronny handle this situation himself like a man. I found all this interesting, Steve, because I found it interesting. I was like, oh, man, Ryan Clark's making good sense here. But I also was sitting there thinking, LeBron will be sitting at home going, hey, didn't you go on TV crying about some old white lady calling your son a name, and now you're telling me to stand down in defense of my son? Anyway, let me take care of our great friends at Preborn. You guys know our mission here at Fearless. We believe life begins, we know life begins at conception, and no organization supports that worldview better than Preborn. Preborn provides expectant mothers an ultrasound. They introduce the baby to the mother while the baby's still in the womb. And so if that woman is considering aborting her child, once she's been introduced to that heartbeat, once she's been introduced to that image of the child in her womb, she's now twice as likely to choose life. And that's where Preborn and us, we step up and we support this woman for up to 2 years. That's where our money goes that we donate to Preborn. It supports the mother and the child for up to the first 2 years of their life. There's 2 ways to give. Pound 250 on your smartphone, pound 250, say the keyword baby, pound 250, keyword baby, or visit preborn.com/fearless. That's preborn.com/fearless. That's the way I prefer to give. Anyway, $28 pays for an ultrasound. $280 pays for 10 ultrasounds. $2,800 pays for 100 ultrasounds. Whatever you can give, it's all appreciated. It's all tax deductible, and it all supports our mission of supporting the belief, the knowledge, the worldview that life begins at conception. Every baby deserves a chance in life. We don't want to kill our future. Support Preborn. Men, it's time to rise. Our country, our faith, our future, all under attack. I'm bringing the boldest voices to Nashville. Woke Call 3.0 is your call to action. Join me, join Tucker, and let's take a stand together. May 2nd and 3rd in Nashville. I am Jason Whitlock, your host.
Went without so that he could give you an abundant life.
Young men shall only fall. Jason, I know you called us to preach off, but I feel like preaching up in here right about now.
You guys are correct, man. One, I would never compare myself to LeBron James and what he's accomplished, the stress and the critique that's come along with being who he is, right? That's a different level of scrutiny and expectations that he's had as opposed to other athletes. And I do understand the father part, though, right? Because I got 3 babies. Like, I'll kill for mine. More importantly, I'll die for them. And so I understand wanting to protect them. And Stephen A. said that wasn't LeBron James, the athlete. that was LeBron James, the father. But what I say there is you got to separate that, right? One of Pop's famous lines on Friday was, "No, baby, let him be a man." Bron got to let Bronny be a man. The first thing Jordan told me when he saw that, because we were together, he said, "Pop, I'd lose my shit." He said, if I did that, if someone was talking about him and I did what LeBron James did, he would lose it. He said, you got to let me be a man. And I've done that with Jordan in high school. I've done that with Jordan in college. And I'm not saying that he's where LeBron is, but LeBron did what he needed to do. But what about Bronny James? He's also praised more. He's also been drafted in a place that his resume probably didn't say he should have been drafted in. He's also benefited in NIL when he only averaged 4 points a game. He has marketing and commercials and publicity and followings and get paid away from the court more than Mac McClung, who then led the G League in scoring and won the dunk contest 3 times because you're LeBron James's son. So what does it do to that narrative now? Right? How does LeBron running up on Stephen A help the narrative? It doesn't. Because the narrative was he's there because of you. He was drafted in the place he wasn't supposed to be because of you. Now, all of a sudden, we can't talk about him either. Now, imagine if LeVar Ball runs up on Stephen A. Imagine if T. Morant runs up on Stephen A. How classless we would say they are. How immature we would say they are. LeBron James is a father doing the same thing for a professional basketball player. Because LeBron James saw him, and LeBron James wanted to make that point. He wanted to show the world, he wanted to show Stephen A., and he probably wanted to show Bronny, bro, I got you. And I'll do it publicly so everybody sees it. The problem is this. You ain't run up on Skip all them years he was talking about you. You ain't run up on everybody else all that time he was talking about you. And if you're going to run up on everybody that says Bronny James didn't deserve to be drafted where he was drafted at, you're going to have to do a whole lot of damn fighting.
All right, Steve, we're back, and you just heard Ryan Clark take a little shot here at LeBron James. This thing LeBron James has done with Stephen A. Smith and confronting him, I don't think it's landing the way that LeBron thought it would. I know that Richard Jefferson hugged him up and they had a little conversation on the court, but with other people, including someone like Ryan Clark, it's just not landing that well. Are you surprised?
To a certain degree, but even the most myopic have a limit that it is almost impossible to defend the indefensible. I don't think anyone would have had a problem, Jason, if LeBron would have had Rich Paul reach out to Stephen A. Smith saying, hey, before the game, somewhere inside the crypto, we want to meet with you, or I want to meet with you for 10 minutes. I just want to address a few things. But to make an absolute spectacle of this, and Jason, I'm just not lying to you, I actually felt bad for Stephen A. because in that position, what was he going to do? I don't think him going to a Laker game, I'm going to get confronted by the most popular player in the league in front of everybody. That even if he was like an MMA jiu-jitsu 5-degree black belt, what's he going to do? Like, I put him into a figure 4 leg lock? And that thing was bound to become a spectacle. And Stephen A., he likes the attention, but I don't think that type of attention exactly what he wanted, because he knew at that point, well, here I am. I've gone viral, and now I'm going to become social media fodder. I feel bad for Stephen A. Smith in one regard. I think he's actually been very fair to LeBron. I don't think he's been over the top in terms of what he has said about Bronny. I certainly don't think he's been punitive in his comments about the father. So, yeah, I think that everyone that does our jobs on our side of the table, to be objective and fair, we would say that's the last thing we would want is our words to be used against us every single time we are critical of somebody.
I can't throw a pity party for Stephen A. Smith. I think where we've moved in the media space doesn't allow athletes to push back and be aggressive, where when we used to have more access in the locker room and more private times with athletes, again, your guy Doug Krikorian, why can't I not think of the great T.J. Simers, people like myself. Will McDonough, they always had these confrontations with athletes, and for the most part, they never got out of hand, went too far. But I do think athletes have a right to confront us, say what they want to say, and we just have to deal with it because we get to say what we want to say. And someone like Stephen A. Smith that's making $20 million a year, and LeBron James wants to say, hey, man, be careful what you say about my son. I got no problem with it.
Yeah, Jason, those confrontations did not come in the play of field in front of 20,000 people. I mean, you bring up Will McDonald. I think the famous story with him, the one that I know of, he got into a physical altercation with the cornerback by the name of Raymond Claiborne. He had a really good long career with the Patriots, one of their better players. I don't know what happened, but it went sideways. But it's not like Raymond Claiborne during the warm-ups came right up to the 50-yard line and started jostling or doing the Oklahoma drill with them. That, I believe, that actually happened in the locker room. And back in the days that you're talking about, most like Doug Krikorian, when he got chased around the field by Isaiah Robertson, literally chased around. They had to tackle Isaiah from killing Doug. That happened at practice. Okay? So it's not like it happened pregame when there's 40, 50,000 people. I think there's a little bit of a difference here, Jason, between those confrontations and that one.
Steve? I saw this change within my career as a sports writer at the Kansas City Star. We used to have all kinds of access inside the Chiefs locker room. And then all of a sudden, we didn't. It was like we would be in there 3 days a week. And then all of a sudden they had all these rules and regulations and our access was restricted. And that's really become the case now where LeBron mostly talks at a podium. People don't normally get a lot of access to him at his locker like you used to. There was more intimacy. There was more of a connection between the reporters and the athletes. And now there's distance. And Stephen A. sits on a television show, doesn't cover nearly as many games as he used to. The basketball player, Allen Iverson used to see Stephen A. Smith virtually every day. He'd see him at practice. He'd see him at games. Now they don't. And so LeBron James in his mind said, oh, Stephen A's at the game. I haven't seen him in person in quite some time. I got my shot right here. And it's just, I can remember with the Chiefs, we used to be able to watch parts of practice, and then all of a sudden that mostly got eliminated. And now things are, and again, I don't know, you're not in locker rooms probably the way you used to be, but now with these NFL teams and NBA teams, there's so much distance between the reporters and athletes that I can't be hypercritical. And this is not because I dislike Stephen A. Smith, because people say, well, you don't like LeBron James either. I mean, have I just chosen a side? Now I'm just saying, like, that looks like the kind of stuff I used to have to deal with all the time. And this is par for the course, or this is what goes along with the price of being a journalist. Occasionally your sources are going to confront you in an embarrassing way, and you just got to deal with it.
No, there's no doubt about it. Look, I've had issues where I've said something about a fighter, and then their fathers, they'll call, and they're not asking me about the weather. They're not asking me how I'm doing. I've actually had death threats. I didn't take them seriously, but it's not fun to get. And I get it. Look, the athlete-reporter relationship is completely upended than even it was, I would say, 10 years ago. It is so much about access and being able to score that interview. And you're right, the intimacy is absolutely gone. And what's also changed it is like platforms like the Players Tribune, where the athletes themselves think that, hey, we don't even need anybody. We are our own platform. We could start our own YouTube. And I love this phrase, we can tell our own stories, which is the athlete's version of, I'm just living my truth. Because you know what you're going to get at that point. Okay. So that is true. But I would say I still felt as though LeBron, given his status, okay, could have said, Stephen A., can I get 10 minutes with you? Can we meet right here in the bowels of the arena for 10 minutes? That's the way I would have personally handled it if I'm LeBron James.
Perhaps you're right. But here's the risk in that. Now Stephen A gets to recreate and tell whatever narrative he wants to tell. And you do it out in front of everybody. It's all on camera. You can get your lip readers. Because again, Stephen A has no problem stretching the truth. The guy, as we have shown you here, the guys are, hey, drug dealers were protecting me as a kid because they knew I was important. Again, LeBron confronts Stephen A in private. Now Stephen A can tell a side of the story that perhaps isn't accurate.
He would have said he landed 17 punches and got LeBron off him. Yeah, I see that point too. I see that point.
See what I'm saying? All right, Steve, let's move to the National Football League. Sam Darnold is going to Seattle to be their new quarterback. And for some reason, perhaps the Jets are planning on tanking. They've given a 2-year, $40 million contract to Justin Fields to potentially be their starting quarterback with the Jets. Obviously, Darnold to Seattle. He just led Minnesota through a great regular season. That probably makes the most sense, but do you like either one of these moves?
Yeah, does Sam Darnold know that the Seahawks have gutted their wide receiver crew from Lockett to DK Metcalf? Look, it's unfortunate that Darnold had the year he had with a team that just drafted a quarterback very high in J.J. McCarthy. And I think that was a business decision made. And as it relates to Darnold, his last 2 games against Detroit and then against the Rams in the playoffs, if there was, let's say, a 50-50 field from Minnesota, do we keep Darnold? It probably swung in that one direction, whether it's fair or not, in the last 8 quarters of football that he played. It's a fresh start. I don't know who's left for him to throw to in Seattle. Jackson Smith and Jigba seems to be a pretty good ball player. But Seattle has let go a lot of veterans. It seems to me that they're in a transition phase. As for the Jets, I know a lot of people are making somewhat of a big deal about the fact that the Steelers won some games with Justin Fields. If you listen to guys like Warren Sharp, who I know a guy that you respect, if you really chart those games and look at them carefully, it's not like he set the world on fire. Okay, they basically won the game because ball control, play it safe, and let the defense win it for you. I'm still not convinced that Justin Fields will ever be a frontline NFL starter.
This Justin Fields move takes me to what we discussed yesterday. They got in Pittsburgh. They got DK Metcalf. They got George Pickens. They got a very good defense. And now everyone's saying, look, Aaron Rodgers has 3 options: New York Giants, Minnesota Vikings, or the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's got to be a very attractive option for Aaron Rodgers, more so than the New York Giants for sure. I guess Minnesota, but they have their quarterback of the future, J.J. McCarthy. But if he went on a 1-year rental to Minnesota after signing with the Jets, that would be a repeat of Brett Favre.
That's Favre too. Yeah. Look, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, which I'm not, and I'm pretty sure he's not going to listen to my counsel, just look at the options that you listed. One of those teams did make the playoffs. Now, did they sputter in? Did they kind of scrape by, or are they in that vortex of mediocrity of between 9 to 10 wins? Yes, but you look at the parts, and it's highly volatile with what he has to work with. But I'm going to repeat myself. If I am Mike Tomlin, I look at Aaron Rodgers straight in the eye and say, for 1 year, starting in April, can you be all in on football? All that other eclectic stuff, stuff it in the closet, because I would hope, and again, this is just a hope, that Aaron Rodgers actually cares about his football legacy. I know he's got other interests. He's a different guy. But when I watched that documentary on him on Netflix, I'm not going to lie to you, I thought he came off as likable. I really did. I actually think hey, he's not a bad guy. He's just different. And I still get the sense, as hard as he worked, he cares about football. The question is, Jason, does he care to the degree that you want your starting quarterback to have? That's the question.
Well, there is another question, though. If you're Aaron Rodgers, look at it from his perspective. Tomlin Steelers perspective he just gave. Justin Jefferson in Minnesota and a dome stadium, or Pittsburgh and two volatile receivers and a team that, you know, scrapes by and makes it to the playoffs every year but kind of phases out? Of those two options, where are you going?
Well, Minnesota, they got to find out if J.J. McCarthy can play. I just like, so you lose 1 year because of an injury. Darnold earns a new contract. So my view is them letting go of Darnold, cutting bait. Maybe they've already made up their mind. We've seen enough from McCarthy that he's our quarterback. That's the way I read that particular decision from that organization.
Steve, appreciate you. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Tell Mario we missed him. Would have loved to have said hi, but I know I'm Fat Andrew Tate, and that could blow up. He'd lose all kinds of movie deals. But I love Mario, his whole family. Love following him on IG. Thank you so much for the time. Shemeka Michelle, next. Men, it's time to rise. Our country, our faith, our future, all under attack. I'm bringing the boldest voices to Nashville. Roll Call 3.0 is your call to action. Join me, join Tucker, and let's take a stand together. May 2nd and 3rd in Nashville. I am Jason Whitlock, your host.
Went without so that he could give you an abundant life. Now it's time for you to evade the ego trip so that someone else can live better. Amen.
It's necessary that we decide to become men of character, of godly intent.
He gives power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increases strength. Even you shall faint and be weary. Young men shall utterly fall. Jason, I know you called it to preach off, but I feel like preaching up in here right about now.
Now, I like Jason. I enjoy his work. I respect him. But I must say that this is where the argument starts to come across as a bit disingenuous. Again, if you want to say that a pardon wouldn't have much practical effect, that's one thing. Reasonable people can disagree on that. Or if you want to say that it's actually worse for Chauvin to get pardoned, then again, that's a reasonable argument. I'm not convinced by it, but it's a reasonable argument. But what we're getting here is something else entirely. Whitlock has stated repeatedly that he believes Chauvin didn't receive a fair trial. He believes the conviction should be overturned. If that's your belief, and it happens to be the correct belief, then saying now's not the time for a pardon is a dodge. Okay, if now is not the time, when is the time? If it's true that pardoning him would be politically disastrous, should we do it closer to the midterms? Should we do it when the 2028 campaign is in full swing? Should we just never do it and say, sorry, Chauvin, you were wrongfully convicted, but too bad? If it's politically unpopular but right to do, now is precisely the time to do it. When you're as far from the next elections as you're going to get. If it's politically popular and also right, now is still the time to do it. If it's the wrong thing to do in principle, then there is no right time, right? Whichever is the case, now is not the time is the kind of thing you say if you don't want to say what you really think. And in this case, I think that there are some conservatives using the now is not the time dodge because they actually agree with the BLM narrative about the case, but they don't want to say that. And then there are other commentators who disagree with the BLM narrative and would actually like to see Chauvin pardoned, but they don't want to agree with Ben Shapiro or give him any credits, so they're finding a reason to object.
Welcome back, Shemeka. We just listened to Matt Walsh politely disagree with me while somewhat insinuating that I had some sort of ulterior motive. One, he suggested that there are some black conservatives that really secretly support BLM. And he said this in a way, it's like, is he talking about me? And then he did a second part where he said, or they just want to disagree with Ben Shapiro. And I go, oh, he's talking about me. And again, I like Matt and a lot, but I just don't have those type of ulterior motives that, I'm going to disagree with someone just so I can get at Ben Shapiro. These guys are often conspiratorial land. I think part of it is they think they have a problem, and they do. Ben Shapiro has a real problem with Tucker Carlson, and everybody knows I like Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson's doing roll call with me this year. And so I just think that they must be in a tag team. They must all have a problem with Ben Shapiro. I have a problem with bad ideas, and I just think pardoning Derek Chauvin from a federal level is just a bad idea and would cause Donald Trump all kinds of problems.
Look, if Matt Walsh is upset or he didn't like the way you and Delano gave your opinions, and I thought you all were very thoughtful, he's really going to be mad at me because I'm not thoughtful at all. My thought is Derek just has to take one for the team. It just is what it is. I'm so sorry, but it is not the time. We have bigger fish to fry. Not only do we have midterms coming up, but in 2028, I still want us to keep a Republican president. And I just know because of the whole racism angle, it will not fare good for us. So I just feel sorry, Derek. People do it all the time. They suffer behind bars and it's not right, and they may be innocent and whatever. But I just feel like we have bigger fish to fry. I wouldn't even care if they somehow, got him out and we didn't know and he lived his life under the radar, changed his name, whatever. I just don't think it should be a big spectacle of him being pardoned. And so I don't have as much thought as you and Delano gave. I felt like you gave a great argument about going from the federal level, then he would have the state level. I heard Matt's counter to that. But for me, he just has to take one for the team. Sorry, not sorry.
Well, I don't want Derek to have to take one for the team forever. I don't want that. I just think there's a much harder road for freedom for Derek Chauvin that has to be traveled. And so if they were out like, hey, we're raising money for Derek Chauvin's defense team, I'm all for that. And let's try to get an appeal. Let's get him sprung from these state charges, the real heavy charges. I'm all for that. A pardon, almost, and even as bogus as I think the trial was, I think it would be inappropriate to come in and step on a state. States' rights. I actually believe in them, and I don't think presidents should step in and overrule what transpired in a state. I just think that the long journey to freedom for Derek Chauvin, we should help him fight that. We should be supportive of it. I think a federal pardon, though, at this point, would sidetrack so much that needs to transpire under the Trump administration. And I think it would, the inroads that Trump has made with black voters, I think it would be destroyed. And this is all anybody would talk about, is Trump and Derek Chauvin, and look how racist Trump is. This is like the Central Park Five all over again. And so, my deal certainly isn't, I don't think anybody legitimately believes that I secretly support Black Lives Matter. Boy, if this is secret support of Black Lives Matter, that's insanity. I could see someone saying, oh, Whitlock he can't stand Ben Shapiro and he just wants to, and it's just not true. And the only reason this whole topic, when they launched this thing, it was trending over X. And it was like, and then when I go click and see who started, and I just disagree with this. And Ben Shapiro states a lot of opinions. I react to one or two of them a year, and he just happened. I mean, You think a black person doesn't have an opinion on Derek Chauvin and George Floyd? This is like right in my wheelhouse. So much of my brand is on mocking St. George Floyd and the reaction to St. George Floyd, that of course I was going to have an opinion on this. And I don't sit around and calculate my opinions about, oh, well, let me take this side because it's going to shore up my relationship with black people on social media. You can't shore that up. It'll never be fixed. It is, as long as I express a biblical worldview, then people are going to have a problem with me. So I just don't have that type of an agenda.
Yeah, when I saw they were destroying the Black Lives Matter Plaza in D.C., I was happy. You know, I've been excited that people are finally waking up that Black Lives Matter was a hoax. We've been saying it for so long. So to say that you're just trying to take that side is really silly, and it's a weak argument. I know that that's not the case. And we both stand against black people all the time. Of course, they wanted Aunt Jemima off the syrup bottle. If they put her back on, I would actually be happy. I'm tired of holding on to the bottle of syrup that I have, just trying to hold some type of, memory of a better time. But I don't think that the George Floyd thing would actually be the same thing. I have no problem sticking it to anybody for what's right or is not. I'm worried about color as much, but I just don't think it's profitable at that time. There's a scripture that says something, about like we can do all things, but maybe not everything is expedient or something like that. I can't remember the exact scripture, but like some things just aren't worth it. You could do it, but is it worth it? And so for me, I just don't think this would be worth the bigger picture. We're doing so well right now with the Trump administration, and you're right, he has made a lot of inroads into the black community, and we're getting things done. I'm seeing people say, I don't like Trump, but I agree there's only two genders. I don't like Trump. I agree men should not be in women's sports. We're doing some things now that really need to take place, and so I just think that would muddy the waters right now. And it's just not worth it for me. So I go back to the whole taking one for the team. I hate it, but I like better what's happening in America, and that's what I want to focus on.
So speaking of irritating whatever's left of Black Twitter, I did that yesterday when I pointed out there's some 340-pound foster mother who had a 10-year-old foster child that was misbehaving, and she sat on that child for 5 minutes and killed that child. She got a 6-year sentence, and I believe some of it, all of it, some is a suspended sentence. I'm not sure, but she only got 6 years. And I pointed out, like, holy cow. This woman sat on a child, 340 pounds, sat on a 10-year-old, 90-pound child and killed this 10-year-old child and got 6 years. Derek Chauvin restrained a resisting criminal in the way that he had been trained by the state of Minnesota, and he got 22 years. I know this is in different states. I know this is in different times. But someone's got to make it make sense to me that by the way, Derek Chauvin is 165 pounds. This is a 340-pound woman sitting on a 10-year-old child, and somehow a 6-year prison sentence with some and or all of it suspended. It's mind-blowing to me.
Yes, and I'm glad these two, you tied these two together, because had that been Derek Chauvin getting that light sentence, America would probably still be burning. 5 years later, it would still be burning because people would not have accepted that. Yet there's no outrage for the life of this little boy. It's almost as if no one cares. He never existed. She got a shorter sentence than he actually was on this earth. I think it's ridiculous. because he was a foster child? Is it because he was in the system? There's no value to his life. I just didn't understand. It shows exactly how evil we are. And it does go back to showing that Derek got a really harsh sentence, and race did play a part of that. The fact that people were pressuring the jury or whatever, it shows that they did exactly what they did to this man because of the pressure from the black race, from those who felt white guilt and felt like he needed to serve all of this time. Because when you look at the two, they just don't compare. I can even think about my uncle who was murdered back in 2003. His killer who shot him in the head, my uncle was buckled in his seat, in the front seat. He was buckled in by the seatbelt, and the person that killed him was sitting in the back seat. So obviously my uncle was no threat to him, but he shot him in the back of the head. He only got 15 years and only served, I think, 7. So we definitely know race played a part in Derek Chauvin's case. So if they actually gave him a shorter sentence, I would definitely support that. But I think the pardon would just be going too far, because the pardon would say he did absolutely nothing wrong. And I would definitely support some type of shortened sentence, though.
I do, and we're not going to debate this. I do think he did absolutely nothing wrong. But I'm going to say this. Let's just think about this. A 10-year-old child misbehaving. A 40-some-odd-year grown drug addict misbehaving. Both of them restrained for misbehaving. There's more outrage. There's more passion, there's more interest in the 40-some-year-old career criminal drug addict who misbehaved, and a police officer restrained him in the way that the state had trained him. There's more outrage. And so what we know, going back to the race deal, is that this 10-year-old white child were black, and this 340-pound white woman was still white. There would be so much, whatever town this happened in would be on fire right now tonight. And it wouldn't even matter, literally, if they gave her a sentence of 20 years. People would say, how come it wasn't 21? How come it wasn't 25? How come it wasn't a life sentence? This is a proof. Black lives don't matter, is what they would be saying. And so when you look at these two situations, is what we're really arguing is that white lives don't matter? Because a 10-year-old child misbehaving got killed, and the killer got 6 years, and a 40-year-old career criminal drug addict misbehaving, overdosed on drugs, and a cop perhaps assisted him in suicide, got 22 years. Maybe it's time to dust off the Candace Owens, Kanye West, White Lives Matter t-shirts, because that seems to be the issue more so than the other way around, if we're just basing it on the criminal justice system.
Yeah, I think white lives don't matter. And I also believe black lives don't matter unless the black life is taken by a white person. That's just the bottom line. We see them get upset, burn down stores, loot, riot, but they only do it when the killer is white. And that shows to me nobody really cares about life. Life isn't significant to them. These are the same people that are pushing abortion, knowing how abortion affects the black community. So they don't care about life. It's all about optics. It's all about race. It's all about skin worship. And that's just what it is. If it was really about life, they would be just as outraged about this little boy losing his life in this manner, the same way they were outraged about George Floyd. But it's not about life. And we knew that then, which is why if Derek Chauvin had gotten off back then, I would have been fine. I wouldn't have been one of these people that were upset and saying, oh, he got off because he was white. Because as you mentioned, this was him following protocol, and this was a technique that he learned. I actually have a friend that's a police officer who said, this is a real technique, and he's going to get off because of that. So we were all shocked when he actually was proven guilty. But because of the race element, we knew that was the reason that he was actually found guilty. It's just that now for Trump to step in, I don't think it would be a good thing for Trump. And for me, I'm all about winning. I'm sorry. Just
all I do is win, 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 no matter what.
Right.
All right.
No matter what.
Shemeka, thank you so much. Appreciate your time this morning. We will see you next time. We will play tomorrow, and we will see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I wanna be, I just want, I wanna be, I just